Meet Milo, a mouse so timid he barely speaks above a whisper. But deep inside, there's a gentle voice that says, "You can do this." The Dragon Keeper. Challenge is coming. A mysterious test that no one expects Milo to try. Milo doesn't want to prove himself to anyone else, only to himself. Can bravery mean being kind instead of loud? What happens when the quietest mouse in the meadow walks toward the greatest danger? Let's get cozy and discover what makes Milo different from all the other mice. Milo was smaller than most mice, and he often felt it. While the others raced through the meadows, their voices bright and tails waving, Milo moved quietly, hugging the stone walls and slipping through shadows. His fur was soft and gray, blending in wherever he went. Even his whiskers, which twitched with curiosity, did so in such a gentle way that you might not notice unless you looked closely. He preferred it that way. Milo didn't like being in the spotlight, but Milo had a secret that made him different from everyone else. Every morning after breakfast, the kitchen table would be covered in crumbs. The other mice would rush in, squeaking and laughing, pushing and nudging to get the best bits. Milo always stood back, his paws pressed together, waiting until the crowd had finished. When only a single crumb was left, he'd quietly take it and slip away, eyes downcast. That crumb was never for him. Later, when no one was watching, Milo would leave it where it was needed most. Maybe a baby bird would find it after tumbling from its nest, or a sick mouse would discover it when they needed it most, or perhaps even a pair of chilly ants would stumble upon it on a cold evening. Milo noticed how the smallest creatures managed to get by, and he liked knowing he could help, even if it was just a little bit at a time. No one ever saw Milo do these things. He never told anyone, and he didn't want to be thanked. The idea of someone noticing made his cheeks warm. Milo helped because it felt right. But sometimes, when he watched the other mice, he wondered if his quiet kindness really mattered. The others seemed so sure of themselves, darting around and making friends with everyone they met. Milo felt swallowed up by the noise, unsure where he fit in. Trips to the market made him nervous. He kept his head down while others chatted and bargained. He didn't dislike being around others, but he felt lost in the crowd, like a pebble in a river. When Milo imagined being brave, he pictured something loud, someone who walked straight through the center of town, or spoke up in meetings, or carried heavy things with a grin. Bravery seemed so far away, like a mountain he could never climb. He watched the older mice, the ones who laughed with booming voices and lifted sacks of grain with ease. Milo felt small and quiet next to them. When he saw other mice take the lead or face danger. He wondered if he could ever be like that. Maybe he just didn't have it in him. But Milo's secret wasn't just about crumbs. It was about the way he noticed things others missed. If a bunny was lost in the dark, Milo would gently guide a firefly to light her path. If a snail struggled with a big leaf, Milo would find a stick to help him balance. These tiny acts, done quietly and with care, made a difference. Sometimes there were whispers. Someone little must have helped. The stories drifted through the meadow, soft as the evening wind. Even tiny acts of help can make big ripples. Sometimes the smallest kindness can change someone's whole day. Milo didn't think of himself as strong, but every crumb and every gentle nudge was a sign of the courage inside him. Still, Milo was hard on himself. At night, he curled up on his patchwork cushion, listening to the distant voices in the gathering hall. The loud mice told stories of adventure and bravery, of outsmarting predators and winning food for the family. Milo listened, his heart full of longing. He wanted to be part of those stories. He wished he had something bigger to share than a few crumbs or a quiet moment in the shadows. But how could someone so small and shy ever do something that mattered? What Milo didn't know was that his quiet strength was waiting for a moment to shine. Underneath his gentle ways and soft words was a bravery he hadn't noticed yet. He doubted himself so much that he missed the steady resolve he carried every day. That was about to change. One morning, something new appeared in the heart of the meadow. A notice was tacked up near the marketplace tree. It was about the Dragon Keeper Challenge. Every so often, the dragon who lived in the mountains would stir, and the animals would whisper in nervous voices. Dragons weren't mean, but they were huge and mysterious. Their fire, claws, and wild ways made everyone careful. The Dragon Keeper Challenge wasn't about fighting the dragon. It was about understanding it, caring for it in its cave. But no one wanted to try. As Milo walked along his usual path, he saw the other mice glancing at him and then quickly looking away. He knew what they were thinking. Can you imagine little Milo stepping into a dragon's cave? No one said it out loud, but Milo felt the weight of their thoughts. He kept to the edges, as always, but something tugged at him that day. He paused near the tree, his toes pressing into the grass. The notice fluttered in the breeze. The Dragon Keeper Challenge. Milo stood still, thinking about the things he'd done. The crumbs, the firefly, the stick. He wondered if even the smallest things could add up to something strong. Maybe, he thought, he could be brave too. even if it didn't look like anyone else's. Bravery. Maybe he could try. Just this once, he took a soft breath and stepped toward the tree. His steps were quiet and small, but this time, he didn't stop. The Dragon Keeper Challenge was waiting, and Milo felt something new growing inside him. A hope that he could do more than he ever believed. As Milo moved closer to the notice, the meadow seemed to hold its breath. The challenge was a mystery almost as large as the dragon itself. The Dragon Keeper Challenge was known by everyone in the meadow, but few ever spoke about it for long. The notice on the tree stood out, a bold invitation that most animals hurried past. The rules seemed simple. Spend 3 days in the dragon's cave and care for the dragon. But everyone knew it was much more than that. Years ago, a brave young badger volunteered. He lasted only a few hours before running back to the meadow, his fur singed and his eyes wide with fear. He never spoke of what he saw, but after that, no one else tried. The challenge's reputation grew, and the story of the badger was whispered in quiet corners, a reminder that even the boldest could be humbled by the dragon's cave. As Milo read the notice, the meadow's usual sounds faded. The animals nearby watched, some from behind leaves, and others from the safety of branches. Their whispers started and quickly spread. "He'll be back before sunset," a squirrel said softly. "He's too gentle for the dragon," a hedgehog added, shaking his head. The crowd's words mixed together, but Milo didn't let them distract him. He paused, letting the noise slip away, and focused on the feeling in his chest, a quiet determination that felt new and steady. Milo had always wondered what it would be like to do something that mattered, something only he could do. He remembered the stories he'd heard about dragons. Some were fierce, others wise, but all were misunderstood. Milo felt a connection to that. He didn't want to fight the dragon or impress anyone. He wanted to understand, to see if kindness could matter in a place everyone else feared. He stood quietly at the notice, reading it twice more. The words didn't change, but Milo's heart did. He realized he didn't need to be loud or strong to try. He just needed to be himself. The thought made his paws feel lighter, even as his stomach fluttered. That evening, Milo sat in his small room, the candlelight flickering across the walls. He thought about the challenge, the cave, and the dragon. He packed his things with careful hands, a small bundle of food, his favorite scarf, and a little wooden keepsake from home. Each item was chosen for comfort, not for show. As he finished, Milo took a deep breath and looked out his window at the distant mountains. The path would be long, But he was ready to take the first step. When morning came, Milo left before the sun was high. He walked through the meadow, his satchel resting lightly on his shoulder. The grass was cool and damp, and the air was full of quiet expectation. Animals watched from a distance, some curious, some doubtful. Milo nodded to a few, but he didn't stop. He focused on the path ahead, each step bringing him closer to the mountain. The journey was quiet. Milo listened to the sounds around him, the wind in the trees, the chirping of birds, the soft crunch of leaves under his feet. He thought about the dragon's cave and what it might be like inside. He didn't know what to expect, but he reminded himself that he didn't have to know everything to begin. As the forest thinned and the ground grew rocky, Milo saw the mountain rising ahead. The path became steeper and the air cooler. He stopped once to rest, eating a small piece of bread and sipping water from his flask. The climb was tiring, but Milo kept going, steady and slow. By midday, Milo reached the edge of the forest. The mountain loomed above him, its sides covered in gray stone and patches of moss. High above, a thin line of smoke curled from a dark opening. The dragon's cave. Milo felt his heart beat faster, but he didn't turn back. He walked toward the cave, the ground crunching under his paws. At the base of the mountain, Milo paused. He looked up at the cave, its entrance wide and shadowy. He could feel the cool air drifting out, carrying a faint scent of ash. Milo tightened his scarf and checked his satchel one last time. He remembered why he was here, not to prove anything to the others, but to see if he could be brave in his own way. The meadow behind him was quiet. Milo could almost hear the gentle encouragement of the wind as he took his first steps up the rocky slope. The climb was slow, but Milo was careful. He watched where he placed his paws and listened to every sound. The closer he got to the cave, the more real the challenge felt. At the mouth of the cave, Milo stopped. The shadows inside stretched deep, swallowing the light from outside. Milo stood still, letting his eyes adjust. He felt small, but he also felt ready. He remembered the story of the badger and the warnings from the others, but he didn't let those worries fill his mind. Instead, he focused on the hope that maybe, just maybe, his gentle way could make a difference. He took a deep breath and stepped closer to the entrance. The cool air brushed his fur, and the darkness seemed to invite him in. Milo felt his nerves flutter, but he reminded himself that being afraid didn't mean he couldn't keep going. He took another step, then another, letting the quiet of the cave surround him. Milo's journey had brought him to the edge of something new. The cave waited, silent and deep, its secrets hidden in the shadows. As Milo stood there, he listened to his own heartbeat and the gentle sounds of the world outside. He knew the next steps would be the hardest, but he was ready to try. With one last look at the sky, Milo moved forward, letting the darkness close around him. The first moments inside the cave would be the true beginning of his challenge. He tried to steady himself. Milo remembered what he was here to do. Not to be the loudest or the boldest, but to see if he could be brave in his own way. He took another step. The shadows shifted around him, but Milo focused on the path ahead. His small size, which had always made him feel less than the other mice, now helped him move quietly. He realized that his gentle steps didn't disturb the silence the way bigger feet might have. It was a small comfort, but it gave him courage. As he continued, Milo noticed the darkness was not just emptiness. It had layers. Some parts of the stone walls caught a faint glimmer, maybe from minerals or old scratches along the rock. He saw a deep groove in the wall, curving sharply and rough at the edges. Milo reached out, tracing it with his paw. The mark was much larger than anything he could make. It made him wonder about the dragon and how powerful it must be. He pulled his paw back and shivered, but he kept going. The smell of smoke grew stronger. Milo found a shallow dip in the floor, filled with ashes and a few glowing embers. He crouched down to look, watching the tiny lights flicker and fade. The warmth from the ashes brushed his nose, gentle but reminding him that fire could be dangerous. Still, he was curious. Milo watched until the embers went out, then stood and looked around. The cave seemed endless. The walls stretched on, and Milo couldn't see where the path would lead. He adjusted his satchel and reminded himself why he had come. He wanted to try, to see if he could do something difficult. Now that he was here, Milo felt something bigger than fear pulling him forward. He wanted to learn, not just about the dragon, but about himself. His chest felt tight, and his paws trembled. Milo's thoughts buzzed. Maybe you should turn back. Maybe this is too much. But he pressed his paws into the ground and took a slow breath. Keep going, just a little farther, he whispered, his voice barely above a sigh. Milo reminded himself that big journeys start with small steps. He didn't need to be fast or fearless. He just needed to keep moving, one careful step at a time. Each time he moved forward, his confidence grew a little. The quiet rhythm of his steps soothed him, like a gentle song he could follow through the dark. Up ahead, The cave opened into a wider space. Milo stayed close to the wall, feeling for cool spots on the stone. He set down his satchel and leaned against the rock, letting the stillness wrap around him. He pressed his paws flat on the ground and closed his eyes, breathing in and out, soft and slow. It was the same way he might calm a frightened friend or help a little bird settle for sleep. As Milo's breath evened out, he noticed a new sound, a low rumble, deep and steady, more a feeling than a noise. It vibrated through the stone and made Milo's fur stand up. He held still, listening. The sound wasn't close, but it was too big to be anything but the dragon. Milo's heart thumped hard. He thought about hiding, but he stayed where he was, paws pressed to the cool earth. He opened his eyes and looked around. The cave hadn't changed, but the rumble was still there, like a drumbeat in the distance. Milo straightened his scarf and stood up. The dragon was here, somewhere. He didn't know what would happen next, but he remembered why he had come. He wanted to understand, not just to be brave, but to be kind. Milo took a step toward the sound, then another. His paws left faint prints in the ash and dust as he moved closer, the rumble growing a little stronger with every step. The cave felt less frightening as he focused on moving forward, each small step a quiet promise to himself. He could feel the air changing, warmer and thicker. The path curved, and the shadows shifted as he walked. Milo's heart beat fast, but he didn't turn back. He kept his eyes open, listening to the sounds and watching for any sign of movement. As he moved deeper, Milo's thoughts grew quieter. He noticed the way the light faded gently, the way the stone walls curved, and caught the faintest glimmers. He let himself wonder about the dragon, not just what it looked like, but what it might be feeling. Alone in the dark, the rumble grew steadier, filling the space ahead. Milo slowed down, careful not to make too much noise. He could sense that the next part of his journey would be different. Something important waited in the shadows, just out of sight. Milo took another breath and stepped forward, feeling the ground beneath his paws and the warmth of the cave around him. The sound ahead was no longer just a warning. It was an invitation to keep going, to see what waited in the dark. He moved quietly, each step bringing him closer to the heart of the cave. The shadows seemed less heavy now, and Milo felt a new kind of hope growing inside him. He was ready to keep going, no matter what he found next. The low rumble ahead grew stronger, and the path curved once more. Milo's steps slowed, as he listened closely, the sound now filling not just the cave, but his thoughts as well. He pressed on, steady and gentle, ready to discover what the darkness was hiding. Milo moved slowly, the low rumble growing stronger with every step. It wasn't a menacing sound, not exactly, but it was deep enough to make the stones beneath his paws tremble. He kept close to the cave wall, tail brushing the rock, heart thumping in his chest. He hadn't seen the dragon yet, but he could feel its presence now. The air was thick, humming with something powerful and unfamiliar. The cave opened into a wide chamber, larger than anything Milo had imagined. The ceiling arched high above, lost in shadow. Faint patches of red light glowed softly where embers had gathered along the ground. The warmth was stronger here, almost like standing too close to a fire. Milo hesitated, paws hovering mid-step. Then he saw it. The dragon was enormous, sprawled across the rocky ground in a tangle of limbs and wings. Its scales were blackened at the edges, not with soot, but as though time had dulled their shine. The scales caught the red glow from the embers, flickering faintly in patches like worn metal. Its tail coiled behind it, the tip twitching now and then against the stone, and its head, resting on one foreleg, turned just slightly toward Milo. Its eyes were open. They glowed faintly, a molten golden color, flickering in the dim light. Milo froze, breath catching. He had imagined this moment so many times, had pictured the dragon roaring down at him, mouth filled with rows of sharp teeth. But this dragon didn't seem to notice him at first. Its eyes watched, but instead of fury or malice, there was something else. The eyes looked heavy. Milo's ears twitched. Could a dragon look tired? Before Milo could think more, the dragon's head lifted slowly, and its gaze fixed on him. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Milo stayed perfectly still. Then, the dragon let out a single, thunderous roar that filled the chamber and rattled the stones. Milo crouched, gripping the ground, his satchel slipping from his shoulder. But as the echo faded, the dragon only huffed. A deep, warm exhale that rolled over Milo and ruffled his fur. It felt more like a sigh than a threat. Milo sat up slowly, still trembling. The dragon hadn't moved to attack. In fact, it barely moved at all, except for the slow rise and fall of its breathing. As the first wave of fear faded, Milo looked more closely. The dragon's scales, so dark and thick, were chipped in places, their edges uneven. Its wings hung awkwardly at its sides, the thin membranes torn in a few spots. Even its claws, though long, seemed duller than he expected. It looked less like a fierce beast and more like something weary. Curiosity grew as Milo studied the dragon. Its tail twitched, stirring a small cloud of ash. This enormous creature, wrapped in an air of exhaustion, seemed so different from the stories. Why would a creature so powerful seem so drained? Was it always this way? Or was there something else? Milo remembered how fear of the unknown can make things seem scarier than they are. Standing here, he realized the dragon was not the monster from Tales. It seemed lonely, and maybe a little broken. He hesitated, unsure what to do. Approaching a dragon, even a tired one, was not something mice did. But the way its eyes flickered, heavy and slow, made Milo feel a bit braver. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a piece of dried fruit. It wasn't much, but it was a gesture. He held the fruit out in his paw, took a careful step closer, and placed it on the ground. Then he stepped back. The dragon's head tilted, golden eyes narrowing. For a long moment, it didn't move. Milo waited, hardly breathing. Then, slowly, the dragon lowered its head and sniffed the fruit, a faint curl of smoke rising from its nose. It didn't eat the fruit, but it didn't knock it away either. It huffed softly, a calm sound, and its gaze flicked back to Milo. Curious now, Milo's heart thudded. The dragon didn't look angry or hostile. If anything, it looked interested. It stretched its neck a little farther, head dipping low, almost level with Milo. Up close, Milo could see faint scars crossing its snout and the way its scales glowed in the ember light. Most striking were the dragon's eyes, not just gold, but layered with hints of red and orange, swirling softly. Milo took a deep breath. His paws were steady as he spoke, his voice soft. "Hello?" he whispered. The dragon didn't reply, but it didn't pull away. Its gaze stayed fixed on Milo, and a quiet stillness filled the space between them. It wasn't silence filled with fear. It was something new, something gentle and careful, like the beginning of trust. Milo didn't know it, but this small moment, a simple act of kindness, was changing more than he realized. He had faced the darkness, met his fear, and now, standing before the dragon, he was learning that bravery could be gentle. It could be as simple as reaching out, even when every part of you wanted to run. The dragon's head tilted, then lowered even farther. Its long neck curved as it rested its chin on the rocky floor. Milo stood frozen, hardly believing it. When the dragon closed its eyes briefly, chest rising and falling in a slow rhythm, Milo realized something important. The dragon was not just a challenge. It was a creature that needed understanding. And maybe it needed someone to care for it, just as much as Milo needed to prove something to himself. Milo let out a quiet breath and relaxed his shoulders. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew this was not about winning or conquering. It was about listening, learning, and connecting. The dragon shifted, the tip of its tail curling softly. Milo stepped back, giving it space. But the heavy fear was gone. In its place was determination and a quiet sense of purpose. Bravery wasn't about roaring louder than a dragon. It was about standing steady in the face of the unknown and choosing to reach out. He realized he still held the satchel strap in his paw. He adjusted it on his shoulder and sat down, just far enough away that the dragon could retreat if it wanted. But it didn't. It stayed there, head low, breathing deep and steady. The cave was still, but it didn't feel empty anymore. Milo watched the dragon, wondering what it might be thinking, and feeling something new. A sense that maybe, just maybe, they could begin to understand each other. Milo settled in, noticing every little movement the dragon made. The challenge was no longer just about being brave. It was about learning how to listen and how to see what was really needed. As Milo sat quietly, he wondered, how do you talk to a dragon that doesn't speak your language? Milo shifted his weight, settling on the cool stone floor as he watched the dragon's slow, careful movements. The dragon drew its tail closer, claws scraping softly as it shifted its massive body. And Milo paid close attention to every detail. The dragon's breathing was deep and steady, its chest rising and falling in a gentle rhythm. Milo let himself breathe along with it, matching the dragon's calm pace. He noticed how this seemed to ease the tension in the air, and the dragon's ears twitched less often. Animals pick up on our calmness, he thought. Maybe this was a way to start building trust. He reached into his satchel and took out a small piece of dried fruit. The dragon's eyes flicked toward him, watching closely. Milo held the fruit out, his movements slow and steady, careful not to startle the dragon. The dragon's nostrils flared as it took in his scent, but it didn't move forward. Milo waited, arm outstretched, and the dragon's breathing stayed slow and even. When it didn't take the food, Milo set it gently on the ground between them and leaned back, giving the dragon space. The dragon watched him, its golden eyes steady and focused. Milo could feel the weight of that gaze, but he didn't look away. He remembered how, with smaller animals, staying still and quiet helped them feel safe. So he kept his paws folded in his lap and stayed low to the ground. He didn't try to talk or move suddenly. Instead, he let the quiet fill the space between them. After a while, Milo noticed a pattern. Whenever he moved quickly or reached into his satchel too suddenly, the dragon's tail curled tighter and its breathing grew shallow. But when he slowed down and matched his breathing to the dragon's, it relaxed. Its shoulders lowered, and its claws loosened their grip on the stone floor. Milo realized that the dragon was watching him just as closely as he was watching it. They were learning about each other, one slow moment at a time. He thought about a time he had helped a frightened sparrow. He had sat quietly, breathing gently, until the bird felt safe enough to let him near. Milo tried the same thing now, breathing slow and deep, not making any sudden moves. The dragon's eyes narrowed as it watched him, but it didn't pull away. Milo felt a small spark of hope. The process was slow. Milo offered the fruit again, this time holding his paw steady and not moving any closer. The dragon sniffed the air, then looked at the fruit for a long time. It didn't eat, but it didn't turn away either. Milo waited, patient and calm. He tried to notice every detail, the way the dragon's nostrils moved, the shift of its tail, the soft rumble in its chest. He kept his voice gentle when he did speak, saying things like, "It's okay," or "I'm here." The words were less important than the calm tone he used. As the hours passed, Milo experimented with different ways of moving. Standing up too quickly made the dragon tense, so he stayed low and moved slowly. He tried crawling a little closer, keeping his steps soft and quiet. The dragon watched him, but this time it didn't pull away. Its tail stayed loose, and its breathing remained steady. Milo felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. Each small step forward seemed to help. The dragon's reactions were subtle but meaningful. When Milo set his scarf down for a moment, the dragon's tail nudged it gently toward him. Milo smiled at this small gesture. It felt like the dragon was returning something important, a tiny act of connection. Milo patted the scarf and looked up at the dragon, feeling the distance between them shrink just a little more. Milo also noticed that the dragon responded to his voice. He kept his words soft and his tone gentle, and the dragon's eyes softened in response. Once, when Milo stretched his arms above his head and yawned, the dragon stretched its neck upward, its wings flaring slightly before folding back into place. Milo let out a quiet laugh, surprised by the dragon's mimicry. The dragon rumbled softly, a sound that was more like a gentle stone settling than a roar. Trust grew slowly between them. Milo saw it in the way the dragon stayed relaxed when he moved nearby, and in the way it watched him with curiosity instead of fear. When Milo offered food again, the dragon finally reached out with its claws and took the fruit, eating it slowly. Milo's heart lifted at this small victory. It wasn't just about feeding the dragon. It was about showing that he meant no harm. As the day went on, Milo and the dragon settled into a quiet routine. Milo would sit and watch, breathing in time with the dragon, and the dragon would watch him in return. Sometimes, Milo talked softly about things he knew, how the wind felt in the meadow, the way the sun looked on the stones, or the sound of rain on the roof at home. He didn't know if the dragon understood, but sharing these gentle stories helped him feel less alone. The dragon's behavior changed in small ways. It shifted less when Milo moved, and its tail no longer curled tightly around its body. Once, when Milo left his scarf on the ground, the dragon picked it up gently and placed it beside him. Milo smiled, feeling a quiet connection grow between them. Trust didn't happen all at once. It grew with every careful movement, every soft word, and every shared breath. Milo learned that bravery didn't have to be loud or sudden. Sometimes it was about being patient and kind, even when things felt uncertain. As the day faded and the embers in the cave glowed softly, Milo leaned back against a stone and watched the dragon settle down nearby. Its eyes closed slowly, and its breathing grew even slower. Milo tucked his scarf around his paws and let himself relax. The fear he had felt earlier was still there, but it was quieter now. He realized that being brave could mean staying calm and gentle, even in the face of something unknown. The dragon shifted once more, settling into a comfortable stillness. Milo watched the faint glow of the embers and listened to the quiet sounds of the cave. He thought about the small steps he had taken and the trust he was building with the dragon. Each moment mattered, and each gentle action brought them closer together. As night settled in, Milo felt a sense of peace. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, but for now, he was content with the progress they had made. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the cave and the steady presence of the dragon fill him with quiet courage. In the soft darkness, Milo realized that learning the dragon's language wasn't just about understanding its movements or sounds. It was about being patient, paying attention, and showing kindness, even when he was unsure. The trust they were building was fragile, but it was real. Milo knew he would need that trust for whatever came next. With the dragon resting nearby and the cave quiet around him, Milo felt a new kind of bravery growing inside. It was gentle and steady, shaped by every small choice he made. As he drifted toward sleep, Milo understood that courage could look like this: soft, slow, and kind. The next day would bring new questions and new tests. But for now, Milo let himself rest, knowing that each quiet moment mattered. The journey was changing him, and he was ready to see where it would lead. Milo sat quietly near the edge of the dragon's chamber, the faint warmth of the embers brushing against his fur. The dragon shifted in its sleep, its tail curling in and then relaxing again. Milo listened to the slow, steady breathing, the sound echoing softly through the cave. It was a peaceful rhythm, but underneath it, Milo's thoughts began to stir. This was the other side of bravery. What happens after the first steps, when the fear isn't gone, but has grown quieter? Milo wondered about the changes he'd noticed since arriving. The dragon no longer recoiled or watched him with suspicion. Instead, it seemed curious, sometimes even calm. Milo had built this trust through small gestures, sitting close, offering food, waiting with patience. He could see that something fragile and promising had grown between them. Still, he found himself questioning if it was enough. He traced the rough pattern of the cave floor with one paw, remembering how he'd never thought of himself as brave. That morning, he had expected to be swallowed by fear. Yet, here he was, step by step, still moving forward. Even with all he'd done, doubt lingered. Was there more he could give? Was this small kindness really enough for a creature so powerful? Earlier, a storm had rolled through the mountain. Thunder rumbled, low and distant, but the sound made the dragon shift and tense. Milo had watched its shoulders grow tight and its claws dig into the stone. Without thinking, he moved closer, slow and careful. He sat near the dragon's head and placed his paw gently on the ground beside its claw. He breathed deeply, hoping to calm both himself and the dragon. As the thunder faded, the dragon's breathing slowed. Its body relaxed, and its eyes closed again. Milo felt a quiet relief. Even when fear rumbled, he could help. But after moments like that, doubt would return. Milo looked at the empty patch of stone in front of him and wondered if he was really changing. He still saw the same timid mouse who hesitated at the cave entrance, who needed to talk himself into leaving the safety of the woods. Maybe he hadn't changed, as much as he hoped. He pulled his scarf closer and watched the flickering shadows on the cave walls. They danced slowly, moving with the faint glow of the embers. Milo thought about how he had listened to every movement, studied every gesture, and spoken softly to the dragon, even when his voice wanted to shake. He wondered if these quiet actions counted as bravery. Wasn't it something, even if it wasn't loud? He remembered how acts of care can change both the one who helps and the one who receives. Bravery, he'd heard, isn't always about big moments. Sometimes it's in the quiet determination to make someone's world a little better. The dragon hadn't asked for his help, but Milo had chosen to care. That felt important. As the hours passed, Milo noticed the dragon reacting differently. There were small signs. When he moved near, the dragon breathed more easily. When he placed a piece of fruit nearby, the dragon rumbled softly, almost like a quiet thank you. But some moments stood out more than others. One day, as Milo was organizing his belongings, a rock rolled loose from the wall and startled him. His fur bristled, but before he could react, the dragon let out a low sound. Not a roar, but a deep, vibrating note that filled the cave. The dragon turned its head sharply toward the sound and kept it there until everything was still. Milo looked at the dragon, wondering if that sound was meant for him. It felt protective, as if the dragon was watching out for him. Another time, Milo dropped his scarf while crossing the cave. The dragon extended its claw and stopped the fabric from sliding away. Milo laughed nervously and thanked the dragon, even though he knew it didn't understand his words. The dragon rumbled softly, and for once, the sound felt almost playful. These moments wove together into something larger. Milo hadn't tried to change the dragon. Instead, he worked to understand it and show he meant no harm. In doing so, he found himself changing as well. He realized that bravery wasn't about being fearless. He was still afraid, but fear didn't stop him anymore. It was there, but it didn't lead. Bravery, he thought, can look different for everyone. For some, it's bold action. For others, it's a series of small steps taken despite self-doubt. For Milo, it was about caring, even when he wasn't sure it would work. That act had changed him. Now, as he sat by the dragon, he watched it stir and exhale a warm breath. Its tail twitched, scattering ash behind it before settling again. Milo smiled softly, feeling the steady presence of the creature that once seemed so terrifying. He reached for his scarf and draped it over his paws. Then, a soft noise echoed from deeper in the cave, a sound that didn't come from the dragon. Milo's ears perked up, and he looked toward the shadows. It was subtle, just a shuffle and a faint rush of wind. The dragon's eyes opened, its body tensing. Whatever rested farther within the mountain, neither of them had faced it yet. Milo pulled his scarf tighter as the dragon rumbled, low and steady. He couldn't tell if it was caution or something else, but he knew the challenge wasn't over. Whatever came next would test both his courage and his connection with the dragon. He stood, adjusting his satchel, and glanced at the dragon. The dragon met his gaze, golden eyes, steady. Without a word, Milo moved, letting his actions show the steady rhythm they had built together. The dragon shifted, lowering its head as if to acknowledge him. Whatever waited deeper in the cave, Milo knew they would not face it alone. He took a slow, steady breath and walked toward the darker part of the cave, his paws quiet on the stone. The dragon watched for a moment, then rose, its shadow following close behind. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to keep going, even when you're unsure. And sometimes, the quietest acts of care are the ones that matter most. Sometimes, when we face something new, it can feel big and a little bit scary. Milo's story reminds us that gentle actions and quiet strength can help us through. He didn't need to be loud or bold. He found courage in being patient and kind, showing that even small steps matter. Tonight, as you get ready for sleep, think of one kind thing you can do tomorrow. Maybe it's helping a friend or sharing a smile. These little moments are special. If you and your family want, share a time when you were quietly brave in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Good night and sweet dreams.